We're here today. I'm joined by my colleague, State Senator Liz Krueger, Assemblymember Felix Ortiz, representatives from the American Lung Association, and environmental advocates. And we're here today with a very simple but important message. We cannot afford to delay the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act another year in this year's budget. It is time now to get dirty diesel trucks off of the roads of New York State. The Senate has been stopping us from cleaning up dirty diesel trucks for over 10 years. Here's the problem. The United States EPA now estimates that 15,000 Americans die prematurely every year due to exposure from diesel gas emissions. Kids and the elderly are disproportionately impacted. In 2012, the World Health Organization determined that diesel fumes are a known carcinogen linked to lung cancer and are more carcinogenic than even secondhand cigarette smoke. That's the problem. We have a solution. It's called the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act. And guess what? We passed it 10 years ago, but it hasn't been implemented yet. The law will require the state of New York and its contractors to operate a cleaner fleet of diesel trucks and reduce emissions of fine particulate matter. Those are the types of substances that can lodge in your lungs and cause serious health impacts. And I'll read to you what the Senate originally said about the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act when we passed the bill from the sponsor memo. Any fiscal implementations of retrofitting vehicles will be offset by savings and health costs attributable to reductions in airborne fine particulate matter. What's going on here? Well, the Senate majority is colluding, working hand in hand with special interests, stopping us from cleaning up dirty diesel for 10 years running. Enough is enough. That's what we're all saying here today. Neither the governor nor the assembly have proposed a delay of the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act. It's time to pass DERA in this year's budget. It's time to get dirty diesel trucks off of our roads. We must do the right thing by our kids, by our seniors, by our communities. So I'm very happy to stand here with advocates and fellow legislators to say, let's get dirty diesel trucks off of our roads. Let's do it this year in this year's budget. And I'm very, very happy as the ranking member of the Environmental Conservation Committee to introduce my colleague who is the ranking member of the Finance Committee for the Senate Democratic Conference, State Senator Liz Krueger.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Well, my colleague said it. I just want to clarify one point that might be confusing. The Senate and the Assembly did pass this law. It's a law. But every year, the Senate Republicans slide into the budget language that delays the implementation date by another year or two so that we aren't doing what we told the people we would do. Now, as Brad Hoylman already pointed out, the reason it matters is that dirty diesel trucks are releasing small particulate matter, I forgot the exact number of what it ends up being, which then pollutes our air, which increases the problem of asthma and other problems, particularly for those people who already suffer from some kind of illness related to their lungs and pollution. So I represent the east side of Manhattan. The east side of Manhattan is famous for many things, but you might not know that's also famous for having some of the highest pollution rates of small particulate matter in our air of anywhere in the state. Why? It turns out, actually, because we have a huge number of dirty diesel trucks going up and down our avenues because they're not allowed to be on the FDR highway, so they're in the valleys of tall buildings on the east side, creating dangerous health impacts for the elderly and the children disproportionately. So we need to get dirty diesel trucks off our roads. We have an answer, we passed it into law, and yet every year we seem to kick the can down the road another year without doing what we know is the right answer. And by the way, we should have all learned by now, when you kick the can down the road on environmental issues, you end up with much, much greater problems that are much harder to reverse and fix. So thank you, Senator Hoylman, thank you, American Lung Association, environmental advocates, all the people who understand what we need to do, and there's no excuse to kick the can down the road one more year. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Krueger. And here's what's going on here. It's a sleight of hand by the legislature. We passed this bill 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the legislature said we wanted to clean up dirty diesel trucks, and we said that it was worth it. It was worth the cost to retrofit vehicles. The public health was more important than any cost. But because of a sleight of hand, and because of special interests, I got lobbied right in this chamber very recently to urge a delay of the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act. We have delayed implementation. It's time for us to stand up to the special interests. It's time for us to join Governor Cuomo and our Assembly colleagues and make certain that the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act is delayed no longer. Let's get dirty diesel off of our roads. Now, I'm happy to introduce an Assembly member who's been fighting for this because his district faces a disproportionate amount of asthma due to diesel trucks. Assemblymember Felix Ortiz.
Thank you, Senator. Again, also I would like to join to thank the senators as well as the advocate groups and the Lung Association for holding this press conference. 25 million Americans are suffering from asthma. We spend about $3,000 when you accumulate all the bills together on the health care to take care of the adverse impact of the emission to the folks, 25 million people in the state of New York and in the United States of America. Secondly, I would like to say that I represent a community in Sunset Park and Red Hook. And if you look to Sunset Park and Red Hook and you look to the BQE, if you put 10 wings at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're going to try to find out where the traffic is going through. Well, the BQE have about 25,000 trucks passing by through the Sunset Park BQE, one way from New Jersey and a way to Manhattan to Jersey back and forth. We have 250,000 trucking passing through the whole year. So as a result of this truck passing through Sunset Park has the higher rate of asthma that our kids are not only missing school, but their parents are missing work. So this is about a public safety and a quality of life issue that is impacting the workforce as well as the education of our children. So it is time for the Senate, and I'm joining my senator here, it's time for the Republican Senate to please look through and read between the lines that this bill, as long as it's taken, is going to continue to impact our children and the development and the growth of our children in our community. With that, I would like to thank you, Senator, again for having me here with you, and we commend you for what you're doing, and let's continue to put the pressure to the Republican Senate and the interest group to stop what they're doing and think about our children first. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. And you can see right here, as the Assemblymember pointed to, 390,000 New York kids with asthma have been waiting a decade for us to implement a law that this chamber passed 10 years ago. It's time for us to do it now. 390,000 kids should not have to wait any longer. And with asthma in mind, I'm very proud to introduce Kristina Wieneke from the American Lung Association.
Good morning, my name is Kristina Wieneke and I'm the Director of Public Policy for the American Lung Association in New York. The Lung Association has long been involved in efforts to reduce emissions from diesel engines, and specifically the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, signed into law by Governor Cuomo in 2006. As you've heard, this law required the state's owned and operated heavy-duty diesel fleet to be retrofitted with technology which helps to filter out the harmful air pollution emitted from these engines. This law originally allowed for an orderly phase-in so that by 2010, the entire state fleet would either be retrofitted or new, and all contractors would also be in compliance. In 2010, the law was amended to provide hardship waivers where vehicles were reaching their end of life. Since then, final compliance has been delayed, and we are facing an attempt by the State Senate to further delay this important law in the 2016-2017 budget. This means that a great law passed over a decade ago is at risk of still not being fully implemented, and that compromises public health and puts lives at risk. For the Lung Association, we are fighting because of this very important reason. When you can't breathe, nothing else matters. We know that diesel emissions are deadly. Air pollution from diesel engines is a major source of harmful fine particulate matter and has been declared by the World Health Organization as a human carcinogen. Fine particulate matter is linked to lung cancer, cardiopulmonary disease, and stroke. We also know that air pollution serves as an asthma trigger, which affects more than 1.4 million New Yorkers, including over 390,000 children. The American Lung Association's annual State of the Air report shows us that while we've made many improvements in air quality over the years, 6.7 million New Yorkers live in counties with failing air quality. They are looking to their public officials, Governor Cuomo, and their state senator and assembly member to step up for them by allowing DERA to take full effect this year. The fact is that a reduction in diesel emissions means healthier New Yorkers. With more than 2.3 million adults living with lung disease in this state, it is time to get it done and not to roll this back any further. With that, we at the American Lung Association implore the State Senate, the State Assembly, and Governor Cuomo to join efforts to finally make this vital law a reality on the 10th anniversary of its passage.
Thank you, Kristina. And you know, the statistics show that the lifetime diesel soot cancer risk for a resident of Manhattan is 1 in 893. You have one chance out of 893 to contract cancer due to diesel in Manhattan. That is the worst statistic for the entire country, and that's in Manhattan. NYBudget found in 2010 that diesel exhaust results in $179,000 days lost, 39,000 asthma attacks, 2,200 heart attacks, and 1,150 premature deaths. I, for one, was visited by a parent just yesterday who told me that her daughter has had 21 asthma attacks this year alone. This is a public school kid who's trying to succeed in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, but she's having a hard time staying in school because of all these asthma attacks. Well, we can do something for her. We can pass the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act and implement it. Not just pass it, but implement it in this year's budget. Now I'm proud to introduce our partner in this effort, Peter Iwanowitz from Environmental Advocates.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Environmental Advocates joins the call. I think the Senator put it well. Enough's enough. This law has been on the books for 10 years. There have been revisions to law to help people who have hardship waivers that were done 6 years ago. This is the year that we have to fully implement the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act. We have plenty of resources on the table with billions in windfalls from the settlements that can be put into the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act. We are going to see an enormous amount of building as a result of a lot of projects that the governor wants to go forward. Upstate and downstate, across New York State, a lot of buildings are going to be going forward. We have to make sure that the construction vehicles that the state is operating and the trucks that are going to be under contract are finally retrofitted or brought in new ones so that diesel is no longer an issue. The law is simple. It simply requires that all state vehicles either have a filtering device or are new vehicles that meet modern emission standards. And anybody who has a contract with the state doing state work also comply with the law. That's all it does. It's very simple, very straightforward, it's entirely common sense. We were happy to join more than 20 organizations that wrote to the leadership of the Assembly, the Senate, and wrote to the governor last week imploring folks to take the position that the executive took with their budget, that the Assembly took with their budget, and the Democratic leadership in the Senate took in their budget position to fully implement the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act. It's reprehensible that the Senate Majority Conference had advanced legislation yet again to delay final implementation of the Act and also to remove the requirement that the Act apply to contractors. Enough's enough. We've had plenty of time to do this. Last but not least, I just want to sort of wrap up and underscore points that have been made already. Diesel is dirty. It's dangerous. It's deadly. And the delays are going to only increase the danger to our kids and the deadly nature of diesel exhaust particles on our seniors. and now is the time to fully implement. We're calling for no more delays in the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess to wrap it up, we have the law on the books. It's time to implement it. This year's budget could do that. We need the governor, we need the Assembly's recommendations to stay in the budget, and we need to reject the Senate's proposal to once again delay implementation of the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act. Let's put our kids and our seniors and our communities above the special interests that have been delaying implementation for 10 years. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.